The mechanical drone of the boiler penetrated the thin walls of room 107, a persistent hum that made the water glass on the nightstand vibrate. I set my suitcase down on the sagging mattress and watched dust motes dance in the narrow shaft of light from the single bulb overhead. No windows. Just 4 beige walls and the constant reminder of my place in the family hierarchy. My phone buzzed. Greg, the hotel manager. "Are you sure about this, Miss Green?" I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. The formal address, Miss. Green felt foreign after years of being just Mallory, or worse, Darren's sister. I tucked the phone away without responding. Better to let this play out. An hour earlier, I'd stood in the gleaming lobby of the Windshore Resort, my grandfather's pride and joy for 40 years. Marble floors that had once felt like home now stretched before me like a frozen lake, treacherous and cold. "Mallory, you'll be in 107. Mother's voice had cut through the polite chatter of arriving guests, her tone light but her eyes sharp as cut glass. "It's all we could spare this year." I nodded, accepting the key card while Darren and his wife Kendra received their gold-embossed envelope for the presidential suite. "Ocean views for you two," Mother had cooed, touching Kendra's arm. "You can see clearly to the horizon from your balcony." The manager Greg had shifted uncomfortably behind the counter, his eyes darting to mine before quickly looking away. He'd worked for my grandfather for 20 years. He knew exactly what was happening. "The Whitfield cousins are in the Sunset Wing," Father added, consulting the list in Mother's hand. "Holly's got the garden suite. We put the Hendersons in the lighthouse rooms. Premium rooms, all of them. Balconies, views, space to breathe." "And me? The room beside the boiler." I sat on the edge of the bed now, running my hand over the thin coverlet. From the hallway, voices drifted through the door, Mother and Darren, their footsteps slowing as they passed. "Well, what did you expect?" Mother's voice, not quite as hushed as she probably thought. "She runs some little design company, probably barely making ends meet." Darren's laugh bounced off the corridor walls. "Remember when she thought Grandpa would leave her something in the will?" Their footsteps faded, but their words lingered, settling into the corners of the room like the dust. 30 employees, international clients. 6 years of building Horizon branding from nothing into something I was proud of. But in their eyes, I would always be little Mallory playing at business while Golden Boy Darren climbed the corporate ladder at his banking firm, propelled by family connections and father's golf buddies. I stood, smoothed my simple black dress, and checked my watch, grandfather's watch, resized for my wrist. 6:30. The family dinner would begin soon in the main dining room, another tradition where seats told stories and place cards marked worth. When I arrived downstairs, the maitre d' led me past the main table, around a marble pillar, to a small table half hidden in shadow. I could see most of my family from here, but they would have to turn fully around to see me. "Is this where Mr. Green wants me seated?" I asked quietly. The maitre d' glanced nervously toward my father. "These are the arrangements I was given, Miss Green." I nodded and took my seat, unfolding the heavy linen napkin as conversations flowed around me without touching my shores. "Darren just closed the Peterson account," Mother announced to appreciative murmurs. "Biggest deal his division has seen this quarter." My brother leaned back, loosening his tie with practiced casualness. "Just doing my job, though the promotion next month will be a nice bonus." When the server came, I ordered butternut squash soup and bread. Father's voice carried clearly. "Need us to cover your meal, kiddo? Don't be shy if business is tight." Several cousins smothered laughs. Holly, seated at the main table's edge, shot me a look I couldn't quite read. Before I could respond, the kitchen doors swung open and Chef Marcus emerged, crisp white jacket gleaming under the chandeliers. He scanned the room, then walked directly to my table. "Miss Green," he said, his voice carrying, "your grandfather's favorite soup. He always said you had the best palate in the family." He placed the bowl before me with a small, respectful bow. "It's an honor to serve you again." The dining room went suddenly, noticeably quiet. Holly's eyebrows rose as she glanced between me and the retreating chef. I lifted my spoon, feeling my family's eyes on me like a physical weight. They didn't know yet. They couldn't possibly know. But soon they would understand exactly what my grandfather had seen in me all those years. And exactly what he'd left behind. Next day, the sky barely hinted at dawn when I slipped through the staff entrance of the Windshore. A skeleton crew nodded respectfully as I passed night auditors finishing shifts, early kitchen staff prepping breakfast. Their quiet acknowledgement felt foreign after years of invisibility in my own family. Greg waited outside my grandfather's office, keys jingling nervously in his hand. "Miss Green, I wasn't sure you'd come this early. I need to understand everything before they wake up," I said, eyeing the heavy oak door with its brass nameplate. "Douglas Green, proprietor." The lock turned with a solid click. Inside, time stood suspended. Grandfather's reading glasses perched on a stack of ledgers. His fountain pen lay diagonally across the blotter. The faint scent of his pipe tobacco lingered in the upholstery. "He never changed anything," Greg said, voice soft with reverence. "Not in 40 years." I ran my fingers across the polished mahogany desk. "How long have you known?" "About the will? 6 months." Greg shifted his weight. "He made me promise not to tell you until the family reunion, said you'd understand why." "And my family?" "They believe the resort was sold to a management company last year. Your father and brother have been," he hesitated, "negotiating with potential buyers for months." A bitter laugh escaped me. "For property they don't own." Greg crossed to a painting of the coastline grandfather's favorite view. He swung it forward, revealing a wall safe. The combination clicked under his practiced fingers. "He left this for you. Said you'd know what to do with it." The metal box weighed heavy in my hands. "For Mallory only," gleamed on its polished surface. I recognized grandfather's engraving style he'd taught me one summer, patient hands guiding mine as we marked bellhop tags. Inside, dozens of letters filled the box, organized by date. I lifted the first, postmarked 16 years ago. "Dad. Darren received early acceptance to Princeton. We always knew he had it in him. He'll need the education to run the Windshore someday. Mallory's art school applications are concerning. She lacks ambition. Perhaps you could speak with her? Evelyn." My fingers trembled as I unfolded letter after letter. Mother's handwriting flowed across pages of Windshore stationery, each one undermining me, elevating Darren. Father's notes joined later terse, businesslike suggestions that grandfather should consider the hotel's future leadership carefully. Behind these, a folder labeled "Acquisition Attempt" contained emails and meeting notes. My father and Darren had formed a shell company. They'd offered grandfather 45% below market value for the Windshore, citing family consideration. "They told him I wasn't interested in the hotel," I whispered, finding a note in Darren's handwriting. "Mallory's design business is her priority. She's made her choice." Never once had they asked me. "There's more," Greg said, placing a laptop on the desk. "Security footage from 2 weeks ago." The video showed Darren striding through the lobby, pointing at fixtures, making sweeping gestures as he spoke to a man in an expensive suit. "We'll gut this whole section. The old man's sentimental about it, but once he's gone, we're looking at premium condo conversions." My throat burned. They were planning this while he was still alive. Every detail. Greg opened another file. "Mr. Thorne will be here at 9 with the full trust documentation." The door opened, and Chef Marcus backed in, balancing a tray. His eyes widened, seeing me behind the desk. "Miss Green!" I thought it was Greg needing coffee. He set down the tray, straightening. "Your grandfather always said you belonged in that chair." Did everyone know except me? Only those he trusted. Marcus poured coffee into grandfather's favorite mug, World's Best Grandpa, painted by my clumsy 10-year-old hands. "He showed me your business portfolio last Christmas. Said you built something beautiful from nothing, just like he did." A knock interrupted us. My cousin Holly stood in the doorway, hair still tousled from sleep. "So it's true," she said, eyes flicking from me to the desk and back. "Uncle Douglas left it all to you." "How did you know?" She pulled out her phone, showing a text from her mother. "Emergency family meeting was called. Darren says there's a problem with the sale. Apparently Douglas did something crazy with the will." "I always knew something wasn't right about how they treated you." Holly said, dropping into a chair. What will you do? I lifted another document architectural renderings for luxury condominiums where the staff quarters currently stood. Notation in the margins. Immediate staff reduction, 60%. Remaining positions seasonal only. The people who'd built this place with my grandfather, who'd shown me more respect in 12 hours than my family had in 34 years, would be cast aside for profit. Did you know they're meeting investors today? Greg asked. Your father has appointments all afternoon. I closed the box slowly, decision crystallizing. Let them meet. Let them promise what isn't theirs to give. Mallory? Holly asked. I texted Mr. Thorne, prepare everything for tomorrow night's gala. The sun now streamed through the windows, painting the room in golden light. I looked at the three people watching Meth, first of my allies, and felt something unfamiliar settle in my chest. Not the vindication I'd expected, but responsibility, purpose. This isn't just about me anymore. The crystal chandelier in the breakfast room casts prismatic light across the white tablecloths as Darren holds court at the center table 30 minutes later. I pause in the doorway, coffee cup in hand, watching my brother gesture expansively to a cluster of admiring relatives. The Winshore has fantastic bones, but it's stuck in the past century. His voice carries across the room, designed to be overheard. Once we modernize, property values will double. Mother nods along, her pearl earrings catching the light. Darren has such vision for this place. I step into the room, and conversations falter momentarily before resuming with artificial brightness. Holly catches my eye from a corner table and tilts her head slightly toward the empty chair across from her. Sleep well? She asks as I sit down. Those rooms by the boiler can get awfully warm. Slept just fine. I lie, setting my coffee down. In truth, I spent most of the night in grandfather's office with Greg, poring over ledgers and operational reports. Through the panoramic windows, I spot Mother leading two men in expensive suits across the lawn toward the private beach. One carries a leather portfolio emblazoned with a real estate development logo. My stomach tightens. Potential buyers, Holly whispers, following my gaze. They were here last month too. Father appears beside their table, clapping one of the longtime waiters on the shoulder with false camaraderie. Big changes are coming soon, Paul. Exciting times ahead. Paul's smile doesn't reach his eyes. He's worked here for 23 years. I hear they're planning to streamline staff, Holly says once Father moves away. That's corporate speak for firing people, right? Before I can answer, Kendra's voice slices through the ambient chatter. This place needs fresh blood anyway. Half the staff should have retired years ago. A housekeeper passing with a tray of orange juice visibly flinches. Excuse me, I say to Holly, rising from my chair. I cross the marble foyer, past the portrait of grandfather that's hung there since I was a child. His eyes seem to follow me as I turn down the service corridor and enter the small conference room where Greg has arranged my meeting. The department heads of the Winshore Resort sit around the oval table, some I've known since childhood. Others I met only yesterday. Chef Marcus, Angelica from housekeeping, Tom from maintenance. 5 others whose livelihoods hang in the balance of decisions being made without their knowledge. Thank you all for coming, I say, closing the door behind me. Miss Green. Greg stands, gesturing to the chair at the head of the table. We were just discussing the quarterly revenue projections. I take my seat, acutely aware of the curious glances exchanged. Greg hasn't told them why I'm here. Smart man. The 4th quarter looks strong, I say, opening the leather portfolio I brought with me. Especially if we move forward with the winter wellness packages grandfather was considering. Angelica's eyebrows rise. You know about those? I know about a lot of things. I pull out the projections I spent the night creating, including the fact that occupancy rates rise 12% when we offer the stargazing add-ons during meteor showers. Surprise ripples across their faces. Chef Marcus leans forward, arms crossed on the table. Douglas always said you had a head for numbers. He said a lot of things, apparently. I smile at them, including that the heart of the Winshore isn't the building, it's the people who make it home for our guests. For the next hour, we discuss operations, challenges, and opportunities. Their initial wariness melts into cautious optimism as they realize I understand the business from top to bottom. Grandfather's books weren't just records, they were a roadmap, one I've been studying for months while pretending to know nothing. Tom from maintenance clears his throat. Begging your pardon, Miss Green, but why are we talking to you about all this? Your brother's been telling everyone he's taking over. The room goes silent. Has he now? I keep my voice light, but my fingers press hard against my grandfather's watch. How interesting. The meeting concludes with tentative plans, nothing dramatic, nothing that would tip my hand too soon. As we file out, Chef Marcus touches my elbow. Your grandfather told me once that you were the only one who saw the heart of this place, he says quietly. Said you understood what matters here isn't the fancy fixtures or the address. It's the feeling people take home with them. My throat tightens. Thank you for telling me that. As I step into the hallway, Darren rounds the corner, stopping short when he sees the department heads dispersing. His smile drops for a fraction of a second before reassembling itself. Well, well. He rocks back on his heels, hands in the pockets of his tailored slacks. Playing pretend in Grandpa's office? Cute. The department heads stiffen, watching the exchange. I can feel their eyes on us, measuring, evaluating. Just getting acquainted with what's mine, I reply, tucking my portfolio under my arm. Darren laughs, the sound hollow and performative. Don't embarrass yourself, Mal. This place needs a real businessman. The old nickname, a diminutive he knows I hate, hangs between us like a gauntlet thrown. 20 years ago, I would have flinched. Now, I simply hold his gaze until his smile falters. We'll see about that, I say, walking past him with quiet dignity. Behind me, I hear Chef Marcus cough to hide a laugh. I head straight for the exit, needing air that isn't perfumed with my family's ambitions. Outside, the ocean breeze carries the scent of salt and possibility. My phone buzzes with a text from Mr. Thorne, arriving at 3 p.m. with all documentation as requested. The pieces are falling into place. Tomorrow night at the gala, everything changes. I look back at the graceful white facade of the Windshore Resort, its windows reflecting the afternoon sun. Grandfather built this place from nothing, pouring his heart into every detail. For 40 years, it stood as a testament to his vision. Now it's my turn to protect that legacy, not just for him, but for everyone who calls this place home. And my family has no idea what's coming. On the gala evening, a champagne glass felt cool against my palm as I stood at the entrance to the grand ballroom. The murmur of conversations ebbed as heads turned toward me. In my simple black dress, elegant without being ostentatious, I commanded a different kind of attention than Kendra in her sequined gown or Mother in her designer ensemble. Holly appeared at my side, her burgundy dress complementing her auburn hair. They've been announcing Darren's vision all evening, she whispered, adjusting my grandmother's pearl necklace around my throat. Uncle Richard keeps toasting to new beginnings. I nodded, breathing in the familiar scent of beeswax and polished wood. For 40 years, my grandfather had insisted on hand polishing the mahogany banisters before each gala. The staff still honored his tradition. Mother spotted me from across the room. Her smile tightened at the corners as she took in my appearance. Mallory, she called, voice honeyed for the benefit of the investors surrounding her. We didn't think you'd dress up. A silver-haired man in a tailored suit, the lead investor, according to Greg's briefing, assessed me with curiosity. I returned his gaze without flinching. Where have you been hiding? Father asked, champagne sloshing dangerously close to the rim of his glass. The slight flush across his cheekbones told me he'd been drinking steadily. Darren's about to share the renderings. On cue, my brother stepped onto the small platform where a projection screen had been set up. He looked every inch the successful businessman in his charcoal suit and burgundy tie, golden cufflinks catching the light as he gestured to the screen. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced, voice carrying across the ballroom, the future of Windshore Resort begins tonight. The screen illuminated with sleek architectural renderings. Glass towers replaced the historic facade. The gardens where grandfather taught me to identify native plants disappeared under concrete parking structures. Staff housing converted to premium shopping outlets. 60 luxury condominiums, Darren continued, with starting prices at $2.7 million, the Windshore name with 21st century amenities. From my position near the back, I could see Chef Marcus's shoulders stiffen. Housekeeping supervisor Elaine pressed her lips together, eyes downcast. Greg stood near the service entrance, his expression carefully neutral as he caught my eye. A modern vision, Mother gushed to the investors. Darren has always understood property development. I moved quietly through the crowd, nodding to longtime guests who recognized me. At the bar, I caught the bartender's attention. The 1982 Dom Perignon, I said clearly, for the family table. The bartender hesitated, glancing toward Greg, who gave an imperceptible nod. Of course, Miss Green, he replied, retrieving the bottle from the temperature-controlled case behind him. When I approached the family table with the gleaming bottle, Mother's eyebrows rose sharply. Mallory, she said, voice low, that's a $3,000 bottle. Darren paused in his conversation with the silver-haired investor. What are you doing? Celebrating, I replied simply, placing the bottle in the center of the table. Father frowned. How can you afford this? I looked directly into his eyes. Because I own the Windshore Resort. The silence that fell wasn't immediate. It spread like a wave from our table outward, conversations faltering as heads turned. Darren's laugh came a beat too late, strained around the edges. Very funny, Mal, he said, using the childhood nickname I'd always hated. Mr. Thorne appeared beside me, leather portfolio in hand. His tailored suit and silver hair lent him an authority that silenced even Mother's attempts to speak. Ladies and gentlemen, Greg's voice carried from where he now stood at the microphone. May I present Mallory Green, owner of the Windshore Resort. The silver-haired investor took one step back from Darren, then another. Mother's face was drained of color. There must be some mistake. No mistake, Mr. Thorne said, opening his portfolio. Douglas Green placed the hotel in a private trust 8 months ago, with his granddaughter as the sole beneficiary. Father reached for the documents. This can't be legal. On the projection screen, Darren's condominium renderings disappeared, replaced by security footage Darren showing developers around the property, pointing to walls that would be demolished, gardens that would be paved over. The footage shifted to my brother and grandfather's office, rifling through papers, pocketing something small that glinted in the light. My grandfather's voice filled the ballroom, a recording from 6 months before his death. My legacy isn't the building. His familiar baritone stated clearly. It's the understanding that true worth isn't measured in dollars but in dignity. Mallory is the only one who ever understood that. I stood perfectly still as my family's carefully constructed facade crumbled before 200 witnesses. Mother's tears appear on cue, perfect droplets that roll down her cheeks without disturbing her makeup. I've seen this performance before at charity galas, board meetings, whenever she needs sympathy. We were only trying to protect the family legacy. Her voice cracks just enough to sound authentic. Father steps forward, shoulders squared like he's addressing a boardroom. This was all a misunderstanding, Mallory. Let's discuss this privately. His eyes dart around the ballroom, assessing the damage to his reputation in real time. Darren's transformation is remarkable. The smirk that defined his face minutes ago has vanished, replaced by an earnest, concerned expression I've never seen directed at me. I was only exploring options to help the business grow, he says, hands spread wide. For all of us. The three of them form a perfect triangle around a coordinated attack they've likely rehearsed without realizing it. The room watches, breath held, glasses frozen midway to lips. Holly catches my eye from across the room and gives me the slightest nod. I didn't orchestrate this to humiliate you, I say, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. My heart hammers against my ribs, but my words emerge clear and measured. That was never the point. Mr. Thorne steps forward with a leather portfolio. I place my hand on it, stopping him momentarily. I've known about grandfather's will for months now. Mother's carefully crafted sorrow falters. I wanted to see how far you'd go. The truth tastes both bitter and sweet on my tongue. What you'd do if you thought I didn't know. The projector screen behind me flickers to life as Greg activates the system from the back of the room. Darren's voice fills the ballroom. First order of business: cut 30% of staff. Focus on the lifers. They're costing us a fortune in benefits. Darren lunges toward the AV controls, but my security blocks his path. On screen, Darren continues. Mom thinks we should keep some old-timers for appearance's sake, but once we convert to condos, we won't need most of them anyway. Chef Marcus stands near the kitchen doors, arms crossed, watching Darren's recorded betrayal with a stone face. Beside him, waitstaff and housekeepers who've served this hotel for decades absorb the truth of how little they matter to the family that employed them. The screen changes to emails mother to father. Douglas is getting sentimental about Mallory. We need to move quickly before he does something foolish. Father to Darren, your sister doesn't have the capital or connections to run a property of this size. Once we have control, we can sell off the antiques before conversion. The old man collected too much junk anyway. With each revelation, my family shrinks before me, not physically, but in substance, becoming less solid, less formidable. The giants who towered over my childhood diminish with each truth exposed. This isn't about inheritance, I say, walking toward them. My legs tremble beneath my dress, but no one can see. It's about character. I turn to mother first. You told grandfather I had no interest in the hotel while simultaneously telling me he'd decided to leave everything to Darren. To father, you approached investors about property you didn't own, using grandfather's illness to suggest decisions he never made. Finally, to my brother, and you, Darren, you plan to fire people who've worked here since before you were born, people who carried you when you skinned your knees on these very floors. I open grandfather's journal, the last one he kept before his death. The 12th of November, Mallory visited today. While Evelyn and Richard bring Darren for obligatory holiday appearances, Mallory comes because she wants to. She sees people, not opportunities. The hotel will be safe with her. Mother's composure finally cracks. Her face crumples like tissue paper in rain, genuine emotion breaking through decades of practiced poise. Father stands motionless, the calculation behind his eyes giving way to something I've rarely seen: shame. Darren's transformation is the most dramatic. The mask of concern slides away, revealing raw anger underneath. You can't possibly run this place, he spits. You'll destroy everything in a year. Perhaps, I say softly, but they'll be my mistakes to make. I removed the key to room 107 from my purse, the room by the boiler that vibrated with mechanical hums and family dismissal. I don't need to stay beside the boiler anymore. I place the key on the table between us. I know exactly who I am. The room erupts in murmurs as investors edge toward the doors. Family friends suddenly discover urgent matters elsewhere. Only Holly steps toward me, taking her place at my side. Behind me, the staff of the Winshore Resort stands straight-backed and certain. Greg, Chef Marcus, the housekeepers, the gardeners, the true heart of grandfather's legacy. My hand trembles as I close the journal, but my voice does not. Grandfather believed in second chances. I say to my family, so do I, but they must be earned, not taken. In their eyes, I see the first glimmer of something unfamiliar: respect mingled with fear. Not fear of what I might do to them, but fear of a world where I am no longer the least of them. And in that moment, I am both terrified and free. After 6 months, the morning light streamed through the wall-to-wall windows of the owner's suite, painting golden rectangles across the polished oak floors. I traced my finger along the edge of grandfather's desk when watched the sailboats dotting the horizon, tiny white triangles against the cerulean blue. 6 months had transformed not just the resort, but me. Quarterly numbers are in, Miss Green. Greg knocked lightly on the doorframe, a leather portfolio tucked under his arm. The formality in his address remained, but the tension behind it had dissolved, replaced by something I'd never expected: respect. Let me guess, I said, taking the folder. We exceeded projections again. His smile crinkled the corners of his eyes. 32% above last quarter, best summer season in 15 years. I flipped through the spreadsheets, noting the occupancy rates, the dining revenue, the guest satisfaction scores, numbers that told a story of resurrection. The memorial is finished, Greg added quietly, whenever you're ready to see it. My throat tightened. Thank you. I'll go now. The walk to room 107 felt longer than it had 6 months ago. The corridor no longer seemed narrow and oppressive, but simply a pathway, neutral and waiting. 2 maintenance workers stepped aside respectfully as I approached. One tipped his cap. Morning, Miss Green. I nodded, still unaccustomed to acknowledgement. The door to room 107 stood open, the space within utterly transformed. Gone was the sagging mattress and beige walls. Instead, the walls displayed framed photographs of the resort through decades' grandfather breaking ground in 1973, standing proudly at the grand opening, shaking hands with the first guests. Beside them hung framed newspaper clippings chronicling the Windshore's rise to prominence. In the center, behind museum glass, rested his final letter, handwritten on Windshore stationery. Legacy isn't about wealth, it's about dignity. The true measure of success is not what you own, but how you treat those who can do nothing for you. Mallory understands this. She always has. I rested my palm against the glass, the familiar script blurring as my eyes welled. He would have loved what you've done with the place. I turned to find Holly leaning against the doorframe, her expression soft. Sometimes I worry I'm changing too much, I admitted. The beach cabanas, the cooking classes, the local artisan showcase? Holly shook her head. Douglas would have implemented those years ago if Darren and your parents hadn't blocked every innovation. She crossed to stand beside me, studying the photographs. Have you heard from them? Mother calls weekly. She's seeing a therapist now. I smoothed an invisible wrinkle from my slacks. Dad left an apology letter at the front desk last month. Couldn't quite bring himself to deliver it personally. And Darren? A text suggesting I could use his financial expertise for expansion opportunities. I smiled despite myself. Some things never change. Holly laughed, the sound echoing off the walls of the small room that had once been my prison. And some things change completely. Later that afternoon, I stood on the balcony of the owner's suite, watching the sunset paint the ocean crimson and gold. In my palm rested the key card to room 107, no longer needed now that the room served as a memorial. Below, guests strolled the manicured grounds. Staff moved with purpose, no longer watching nervously over their shoulders. The scholarship recipients, local students learning hospitality management, gathered for their evening mentorship session near the fire pit. I placed the key card in the small shadow box I'd brought up from the office, closing it with a definitive click. Some might view it as sentimental, keeping a reminder of those darkest days, but I knew better. The loudest statement I ever made was simply knowing my own worth. Everything else just followed naturally.